Greetings, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Tales of Terror. I am your host, Collie Mortwood, and I'm going to guide you through another terrifying tale. I am going to be reading probably our last story of the season from Christmas and Other Horrors Anthology. There is one more story that's set just a few days after New Year, so it's right on the money for us. I hope that your new year has served you well so far and that you are looking forward to 2025 and everything that it's going to bring you. And I just want to remind you that 2025 comes to the number 9, and the number 9 is all about looking back at cycles and releasing things and kind of the end of a chapter and also some transformation. So this is going to be a pretty big year for all of us. The story that I found for us this evening is called The Blessings of the Waters by Nick Mamatas. And it's set in Greece, or perhaps they're just Greek Americans. I'm not sure. I didn't read the whole story because, once again, I like to surprise myself by the ending, whatever it ends up being. However, I am not doing a Greek accent at this time. So we're just going to have to pretend that that's what's going on. So settle in, get cozy, and let's get spooky. The Blessings of the Waters. Greek coffee at midnight was Gus's last bad habit, except for his vain belief that he only had one bad habit. That was a sin. He also tended to snap at his wife, which wasn't good, and rolled his eyes at the members of the Ladies' Philopticus Society when they'd phrase their confessions in such a way as to complain about one another. And then there were the members of the church board. Every one of them was some kind of jerk. They'd mutter, "Gamu tin paniga su," right in front of him, steal pens from his desk, and call him Gus instead of father. And yet here Gus was, at midnight, a few days into the new year, making his own coffee, counting up his own sins, and feeling proud of it except for the coffee habit. So much for resolutions. What was everyone else doing? Sleeping? Watching TV? Screwing? A pebble hit the window over the kitchen sink. Gus wiped away the condensation and squinted. Nassos. His brother-in-law was outside in a half-shredded and blood-stained orange prison jumpsuit, snow up to his shins, breath steaming from his mouth like his belly was a coal-fired furnace. The moon was high and set the snowdrifts glowing. Gus gulped his coffee, burning his throat, rushed to open the door, and waved Nassos in. A freezing wind pushed past Gus and filled the kitchen. Nassos took his sweet time coming in and didn't even kick the snow from his feet. Rude. "Sweet Lord, you must be freezing. You're going to lose your toes," Gus hissed. Another self-interested prayer. "Please, Lord, don't let Nassos call out for his sister." "Let me get you towels, a foot tub full of warm water. There's some coffee left in the breaky." "No," said Nassos in his normal voice, as if he did want to wake up Elpitha, the parish presbytera, Gus's wife, a lady who would definitely do the right thing and call the police immediately and scream at Gus until they showed up. "I'm fine. It'll be okay, and I don't want you running off and calling 911, Father." "I won't," Gus said. "Sit, but I am getting a towel first. I'm not explaining bloodstains on the kitchen chairs to Elpitha tomorrow morning." "You know I don't drink coffee. Do you have any?" "No." Gus had plenty of what Nassos was going to ask for. Retsina, ouzo, beer, wine, even rubbing alcohol. A couple cans of Sterno, for that matter. "I'm cold," said Nassos. He followed Gus to the linen closet in the hallway and took 3 fluffy towels that weren't going to be white for much longer. He wrapped 2 around his thin body as he stepped back into the kitchen and carefully arranged the 3rd over a chair before sitting on it. "How about eggs and toast? No, wait. Just eggs, Gus said. Naso raised an eyebrow. Gus tilted his head toward the bedroom where Epitha was, he hoped, still sleeping. The toaster makes a noise when it's done, he explained. Nasos was wiry as ever. He could have been an Olympian in swimming and track and field and had everything not gone wrong for him. The flunking, the fighting, the drinking, the alienation from Elpitha and his brothers and cousins, the wrong crowd, the accident, the 2 parishioners Gus had to bury. Gus crossed himself. I'm not a vampire, Gus. You don't need to make the sign of the cross, Naso said. So it's Gus again, is it? May I still have those eggs, Father? Yes, said Gus. He focused very hard on extracting a frying pan from the cabinet without making too much noise, and even harder on not asking the question at the top of his list. How did you escape? Nasos had obviously performed an amazing high jump or pole vault from the prison yard to the top of the fence, got tangled up in the razor wire, but managed somehow to tear himself free and run for it. Don't prisons have guard towers full of snipers, helicopters fueled up and ready to go, bloodhounds trained to find escapees? There was nothing to be gained from knowing, so Gus asked the second question on his list as he poured a bit of olive oil into the pan. Why did you come here to ruin your sister's night? Why not Johnny's house? He'd turn me in as soon as look at me, Naso said. Hell, he'd shoot me and try to collect the bounty. Is there a price on your head, Athanasios? Gus asked. So it's Athanasios, is it? Nasos asked. Scrambled her over easy. Anything's fine. And no, there isn't a price on my head, not that I know of, but you know Johnny. I do. Johnny was Gus's age. How about Peter? He has cats, and I'm allergic, Naso said. The man has 6 cats. What kind of man has 6 cats? How about Billy? Too far, said Nasos. I'd have been snagged before I made it halfway to his place in Mastic Beach. I'm not here to talk to my sister, Father. I'm here to talk to you. You know my godfather, Harry Papas. I baptized you, didn't I? Asked Gus. Harry? More like the godfather. Scrambled's fastest. Let me get you a plate and a fork. He still tithes from the prison, Naso said. Tell me something I don't know, Gus said as he set the small plate of eggs before his brother-in-law. You can't buy your way into heaven, but Harry Papas is giving it the old college try. He crossed himself again. Nasos was the baby of the family. Elpitha was 20 years older than her youngest brother. Gus had baptized baby Athanasios, took Harry's big fat tip for it, taught the kid folk dancing in the church's basketball court, and now look at him. Gus didn't know whose neck he wanted to wring first, the kid's, Harry's, or his own. You canceled the blessings of the waters, Naso said. I saw it in the church, the newsletter that you send to Harry. It's practically the only thing they let us read in jail. They don't even let you read The Amazing Spider-Man. He has a problem with authority, that Spidey. So do you, Nasos. I told you to tell me something I don't know. I know they don't let you read your Spider-Man. Your sister told me all about it. I get the weekly prison report from her after every visit. I know I canceled the blessings of the waters. Plain and simple, the parish is graying. There aren't any young guys left who want to dive into the Long Island Sound in January to swim after a cross, even when there isn't a bomb cyclone forecasted for Epiphany, and the bomb cyclone was coming. Lord, Nasos, you were out in it. Nasos ate the eggs with both hands, shoveling it all into his mouth like there was some secret written upon them he had to hide. At least Gus wouldn't have to wash the fork. It's funny what people think, Gus thought. I know. I was outside in the weather, Naso said. Now you're telling me what I already know. More eggs, please. I know. I was outside in the weather, Naso said. Now you're telling me what I already know. More eggs, please. He tapped the plate, licked a filthy finger, and wiped his hands on the bloody towel hanging over his shoulders. Here's something you don't know. This is all your fault, Father Konstantinos. That's why I'm here. Gus sighed and took a seat, his wife's seat, at the tiny kitchen table. A wave of exhaustion overcame him. He hadn't even had a sip of his coffee, which was now cold in its little cup on the countertop. Gus was definitely not going to make any more eggs for Nassos. The kid could eat them raw in the shell if he wanted, little pissant. I'm listening, Gus said. When I was 10 and I swam for the cross, Nassos said, the first time, and I got it. You were a strong swimmer. You beat the Spankos brothers, and they were both in high school and varsity. It was so cold that morning. I'd never been so cold. I've never been so cold since. Nassos' gaze drifted toward the window. That's why the cold doesn't bother me. The blessed water is in my bones. It froze the marrow forever. Some blessing, eh? Maybe you can say that having every boy in the parish dive into the water after a cross the priest throws to bless the waters makes more sense in Greece than in New York, Nassos, Gus said. But I don't control the temperature. The weather isn't my fault. It's not even God's fault these days. I was so cold. My mother was hugging me, my father too, and kissing me. It was like when Marika used to visit me in the joint, and we kissed through the glass. I didn't feel a thing. And Elpitha, too. Her arms were so cold. Are these the same towels from back on that day years ago? I'd say that they're the same make of towel, Gus said. We're not going to have to worry about waking her up if you keep at it like this, kid. The sun's going to come up and her alarm will go off and we'll both be eating our next plate of eggs in prison. Remember what you did? Because I was so cold. Gus was frozen for a minute. The years melded together like slush on the sound, and Nassos had retrieved the cross 4 or 5 times before deciding to dedicate his life to other things, like whatever Harry Papas needed doing. Oh yeah, I gave you a little brandy from my flask. A little brandy, Nassos repeated. I liked it. You know what you say about Holy Communion, like it's God's body and blood, and connects us with Jesus and one another? Yes, I know what priests say, Nassos. Now Gus briefly prayed that Elpitha would wake up. That's what the brandy tasted like to me. That sweet, that holy. Why do you think I kept swimming every January 6th, every theophany, epiphany, whatever you want to call it? There are easier ways for a kid to get a snootful, Gus said. Had you stuck with being an altar boy, you could have stolen the wine between liturgies. Nasso's face, calm and too white till now, flashed red as his bloody clothing and twisted into a rictus. Maybe he is a vampire. Athanasios means immortal. Gus found himself thinking for a moment before calming himself and the situation. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that. And I'm sorry I introduced you to alcohol. I didn't know it would be a problem. And it was just what we did in those days, like a St. Bernard with a little barrel around its neck in the Alps, you know? It was just a sip. Just a sip, Nassos said. The blessing is cancelled this year, Gus said. Probably next year, too. I don't even know how long the Archdiocese will let us keep St. Catherine's open. If not for the Papa's tithes, we wouldn't have survived the pandemic. So it won't happen again. I'm sorry, Athanasios. I'm a sinner. Please forgive my sins and pray for me, and I'll pray for you. I'll write a letter to the warden. I'll try to help. You can't cancel it, Father. It'll be your fault what happens next if you do. Gus didn't know what to say. Not even a few words of prayer sprang to mind. I kept coming back for 3 reasons. Your father was so proud. I don't give a shit about him. Nassos slammed his fist on the formica. Gus could hear Elpitha groan in her sleep just a few yards and 3 thin walls away. Hindoxy, Gus said, holding up his hand and spinning it. Fine, fine. What are the 3 reasons? Brandy is number 1. Brandy is 1, Nassos said. I liked it a lot. 2, the cold. I didn't feel it after the first time, like I said. Made it real easy. I could have been at the beach near Yaya's house in Paros in August for all I felt the weather. I'm going to walk back to county after this. I don't want no trouble. Gus struggled to control his eyebrows. Okay, the 3rd reason? You know how you said that? When we ask God to bless the water, it becomes holy? That you make holy water by pouring a drop of holy water into regular water. So when we bless the Long Island Sound, it becomes holy. The Connecticut River becomes holy. The Atlantic Ocean becomes holy. All the water in the world becomes holy. Yes, I know what a priest... It's true. I used to see something down there every year, Gus. Something like a man. Big, though. Maybe 12 feet long. A long man. Long, not tall, because he was on his back, resting, not sleeping, like half sleeping. Little bubbles coming out the holes in his face. I wouldn't call them nostrils, and he was surrounded by other figures. Little creatures with claws for hands and big, I don't know, fins on their heads. And then I saw other things down there too. Bones of things that wouldn't work if it was a body with flesh and skin. Things that glowed black. Does that make sense? Not glow in the dark, but a dark that glowed black. And I'd find the cross every year before, the kelp or the tentacles or the eel-headed arms or whatever, name and appendage, they were all down there. Like I said, the main guy was a guy, could grab it, and I'd see them all start to dissolve. Dissolve, said Gus. Like an Alka-Seltzer. Like an Alka-Seltzer, Nasso said. Fizz, fizz. You and I have fished off that pier 100 times when you were a boy, Nassos. There's nothing down there like that, Gus said. It's not rational. It is, Nasso said. It takes them all year to regain their strength, to regenerate. People flush their toilets and run their jet skis and take their leaks off the sides of the boats and spill their oil in the ocean, and the waters turn foul again, turn profane. They regain their strength slowly but surely, like those goblins. What do you call them? Kokoretsi. Your Greek is terrible, Nas. Kokoretsi is lamb guts shoved into lamb guts. You mean Kalikantzaroi, Gus said. Those are the Christmas goblins, who are also not real. Whatever, I had a bad day. Anyway, Gussie, if you don't bless the water. Nasso shrugged expansively, the way Greek boys learn to do from their fathers. Nassos, I'm sorry. Let's pray. I'm sorry you've been made to see those things when you were a kid. It was probably just. What were you supposed to do in a situation like this? Just say, a lack of oxygen on your overactive imagination? Or, you are just a crazy person? There had been all of 2 days of pastoral training on dealing with believers who hallucinated demons and devils, and not even a footnote about dealing with mobbed-up prison escapees who had the same slow eyes and royal nose of your wife, who was definitely going to wake up and start shouting, Gamo Tinpanajiasu, in the next 2 minutes. Look, if those things were down there, the only reason they don't come up and start eating people like on the late movies is because we bless the waters every epiphany. Why were they asleep for thousands of years beforehand? Why didn't they pop out of the sound and eat all the Montauks? Or the Puritans, when they came? Or those Lutherans your Papu and Henry Papas bought the church building from back in 73? Maybe the Indians had their own blessings. Maybe it's pollution, global warming, those earthquakes that came when they started fracking. I'm just telling you, Father Gus, said Nassos. Well, why didn't the Spanakos brothers see it? Maybe I'm special, said Nassos. And maybe I'm Mama's special boy. Maybe they didn't dive deep enough. Listen, you gotta do the blessing. Get someone to swim. Just borrow a kid from a parish in the city or Jersey. You need to. Nassos' eyes twitched and he looked past and behind Gus. Oh, hi. Gus slowly turned around. There was Elpitha in her house dress. She had her old pistol, Harry Papa's idea of a wedding present 10 years ago, in one hand, and her ancient flip phone in the other. Elpitha's face was inscrutable to Gus, unnerving after 2 decades of marriage. Her eyes were wide and ready, but wet like it was time to cry. Was that a tremble along her lips like she wanted to smile for Nassos? Elpitha pointed the gun at her brother. The phone she tossed to Gus. Call 911. Yes, said Gus. Elpitha, please put the gun down. I was hoping you'd wake up and we could all handle this together, as a family. Me too, said Gus. Me too, Gussie, said Elpitha. That's me. Hope. Gus opened the phone and looked down at it. The screen was dead. Then something huge and hot and sudden filled the tiny kitchen, and the phone hit the floor. I hate driving at night, said Opitha as she put her weight into turning the steering wheel. And I hate driving in the snow. How's he doing back there? She glanced at the rearview mirror. Alive. Still. Go fast, said Nassos. He's the holiest thing we have to offer them. I don't know if it'll work, if he's... I'm sorry, Gussie, said Elpitha mostly to herself. I don't know if this will work, period, no matter what we do. She told Nassos. It was a short ride downtown and to the pier. January was tourist off-season. The snow was ridiculous, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. The town hadn't taken down Christmas lights from around the lampposts and trees yet. The waters of the Sound turned black despite the red and green twinkling and the bright white moon. Gus was a little man, and Nassos so strong, but as long as Gus was still breathing, they had to work fast and be at least a little careful. Elpitha grabbed his ankles, and Nassos wrapped Gus's neck and arms in a full Nelson. Together they manhandled Gus to the end of the dock, and together they counted, "En, Dio, Tria," and they tossed him in. There were no roiling bubbles or glowing black aurorae, no grasping claws and slimy appendages, just a man who floated for a few moments and made a human noise, then sank. It was early morning, January 4th. Nassos and his sister had 2 days to clean up and get down to Pennsylvania, where they had some cousins who had a cabin in the woods. Elpitha's phone wouldn't work down there, so maybe they couldn't be tracked. In the cabin, they could pick up the Long Island news on the AM radio and, God willing, hear headlines no more shocking than the mysterious story of an escaped convict and a missing priest. And then they could start planning what to do next week, where to go next month, how to survive what they had done. But the big unspoken question was this: what the hell were they going to do for next Epiphany? The end! That was the end of the book. That one wasn't terribly spooky and not too gory, just kind of eerie. Blessing of the Waters. So I enjoyed it, and I hope that you did as well. And if I see you next week, well, that'll be great, swell. And if not, that's okay too. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Try to be grateful for something at least once a day. And most importantly, stay spooky. A little love, a little peace. Mwah! Ciao for now. Ciao.